I'm Libby. I'll talk a little bit more about Nuance later and how it fits into my world. But as Dougie said, I'm a writer, editor and producer of content. Liz's schedule was a bit crazy, so she couldn't be here this morning. So I'm just going to talk today content, context and collaboration in no particular order. And the question that we had in an icebreaker was, how do we make our ideas heard? And we don't have these labels at the moment, but if you want to think about that question while I'm talking, and maybe that could be some discussion afterwards, then just think about that. So I'll talk about how I get my ideas heard. And let's take a look at the time warp. This is me back in 1995, excuse me. As you'll see, Comic Sans has just been invented last year. But this is how I started with my self-publishing. I picked up my pen, I did my comics. I took my comics to whomever I could find to photocopy them for me, as cheap as they could, that would be great. And then you can see the next step was to staple things together crazily, sew them together if I felt like it, fold them up, edit them again if I felt like doing it with a pen afterwards. And then I would say to my friends, hey everyone, I've got a new zine. Would you like to show people? Pass it around. And I might even do some footwork myself, put it in the mailbox with a stamp. And that was how I was doing it in 1995. So now, here we are. This will not be unfamiliar to everybody here probably. Things have changed a bit. So while I still start there, and I still have a pen, and I have my camera, and I have my text that I use. After that point, it's all on for young and old. We're going very, very fast. We're going in many different directions. It's instantaneous. We have many channels through which we can get our ideas out there. And the way they come out is different too. So we might have a raw text, we might have a PDF, we might have hyperlinked text, we might have augmented text, which is where, for instance, you might purchase an e-publication with another package that gives you a whole bunch of context that goes with it. So this is not new to any of us. My teenager is doing this probably a lot faster than I am. So, just one moment. Make sure that I've covered all the ground. So in this environment where we have an absolutely enormous amount of content, there is so much stuff and it's coming at us very fast. We can say that the land of content is highly populated. So my response to this is just keep calm and carry on. Well, it's also search reliant, and we all know now that we have to deal with the meta level. We have to deal with tags, we have to deal with categorizing, and making sure that we're selecting our words pretty carefully so that they're really good indicators of the concepts that we're working with. Okay. We also have the possibility of working in real life at this level, so we're actually talking to people about what we're doing. And what we're doing when we're doing this is we're putting out ideas in context. We're giving people a context, we're giving them points on a map that they can approach us with. So, we're also in this place where we have technologically assisted storytelling. So, let's think about, for a moment, Harry Potter. The 7th book came out 5-6 years ago. We were down at the shopping mall at midnight getting the next instalment, the final instalment, that last book in the Harry Potter series. And we were there because we wanted to wear our wizard outfits, for sure, but we were also there because we wanted that next chapter. We wanted the next bit of the story. Now, that's probably not going to happen again, because we're now in the place where we're waiting and we're lining up for technology. We're lining up for iPads. We're lining up for things that enable us to have these stories in ways that are new. They give us a new lens on stories. And I have to say, I just don't think there's any going back from this. So, in that situation then, how are content creators making our ideas heard? I'm talking about fiction today because this is my particular area of interest, and I also think it's a really interesting case because, for instance, how does a fiction writer open their world up and invite people in when the reader is going to have to get through 200, 250 pages of idea? How do you get that idea out there? It's not quite the same situation as, for instance, a cookbook or a text where you have lots of images. Fiction writers, as with other storytellers, are adapting. It's impossible not to adapt. We live in the world where we have this sprawl of things happening. So fiction writers, as much as anyone, we think visually, we think cinematically, we think about games, well, I do. And we don't live in a bubble. So I'm just going to talk quickly about my particular world. I'm actually writing a crime fiction for my daughter. That's the teenager, she's 13, I was telling you about. So in order for me to be doing this, I'm creating the primary text, and of course I'm doing it graphically as well because that's just the way I roll. But that's also so that she can see what I'm doing at the same time. But so I'm providing the primary text, and alongside the first draft, which is completed, I had a blog going, and while I was blogging, I was discussing a lot of the issues that I was encountering about the new world of publishing. So we're talking about transmedia storytelling, and just these are my tags and categories that people can access my ideas, which in turn might give them a way to access the text and the kinds of things. And perhaps that's only the parents of the readers who will be accessing it, but still it's a touch point, if you like. It's a way that people can access the text. One of the other characters, a supporting character, she has, as every character should, she has her own story arc. And her own particular penchants and interests are coming out on her own blog. So that character has her own blog. Now that also is another way for people to access the text. It's, as you say, it could be a touch point. Another thing, while I'm writing this, I've written within the game, the characters within the text, the characters are gamers. So there's a game in there that they play. And for me, part of the exciting thing about being in the here and now is that I can imagine that I would love that to be an app at some point. So for me, that would be another way that people could access my ideas. So this is just to give you an idea of the kinds of things that fiction writers are doing. And it has to be said that this is not a one-size-fits-all. And that's the slide lost. But, yep, that's back. No, it's not. Okay. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So for some texts, you'll realise that this is not going to work to have these kinds of multimedia channels, if you like. I'm thinking about literary classics, and for instance, Kerouac's On the Road, I think, has an augmented text that you can now travel the journey alongside by a bundle of stuff that you can find out about the context. You can have a map of where the journey starts and so on. So that sort of thing, yeah, you can actually do some interesting augmentations, if you like. And for my type of text, you could do hyperlinking for kids that don't understand certain concepts or whatever. I've seen this happen quite a lot. And for children's books especially, this is great to have all these different ways of getting ideas out there. Literary classics, I'm not so sure. I can't imagine myself playing the Jane Eyre game or the War and Peace game. I don't know. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So in order to get all of this sprawl of stuff happening, I might need a little bit of help from my friends. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about collaboration, because this is something that that I'm very much a fan of. And it's partly out of necessity because of my situation, but also because I think it does have some very good advantages. It comes with its own set of challenges. For instance, technology is one. You know, is your technology talking to my technology? Let's see how we can get that to work. Interpersonal challenges. Everyone comes from a different social, cultural background, and so communication is very important. And also clear communication. Well, trust is very important, especially when we're talking about IP and that sort of thing. It's something that we can keep track of much more than we used to in the day and age of paper. We can have a digital trail of who said what and why and all that kind of thing. So in a way, there's a bit of a backup there. But I think that we have to be fairly clear about how we communicate with people and come into the room with an open heart, so to speak. I think it's fairly well accepted these days that a lot of creative ideas are actually generated when people are working solo. So when they're by themselves, they come up with some pretty great ideas. And people feel a bit contentious about this, because some people say, no, you can get better ideas when you're doing brainstorming and stuff like that. But I think there is something to be said for having some level of, some level of isolated time. And this is where a lot of writers sort of think, well, I like to think I live in an ivory tower. And yes, that's partly true, but only for part of the time, because once you've actually come up with that idea, the really exciting things happen when you can get someone else on board. And I say that as a writer, even though people think, oh, that's a solitary thing to be doing. Well, yes, it is, but I don't do it alone. And this is an example of collaboration, the Nuance words world. This is a context that was built by Liz and me in the beginning, and now Jill as well. If Liz and I hadn't kind of had that conversation where we went, gosh, I really love words, don't you? Oh yeah, I really love words. Well, let's talk about words. Okay, let's do it. But we don't do the same thing, so it doesn't matter. We're interested in words, we love language. We made a thing because it gives us an opportunity to create an in real life hub of people who are interested in the same kinds of things. It creates context, and it gives us a lens on which to see words. And so when we look at how I collaborate, for instance, so when I'm generating stories and when I'm generating content in my little ivory tower, the things I'm thinking about are narrative, voice, plot, premise, storytelling, character arc, because all that is very central to the stuff that I'm really interested in when I'm doing that. But once I've done that, I hand that on to someone else. So I didn't win a prize for this short story because I did it completely by myself. I actually had a great, quite a few editors, and one in particular who helped me a lot with that particular story. So that's an example of me collaborating sort of after the fact, if you like. And this one here, this is me when I've got my editing goggles on, and it's great party conversation, you know. N dashes, M dashes, hyphens. Let's talk about apostrophes. That's the stuff that I think about a lot, and I especially think about it when I'm doing work as an editor, when I'm helping other people get their ideas. So I'm helping other people to get their ideas out, and that's how that kind of collaboration works. And now here, this is me with a different kind of collaboration, and so now I'm thinking, you know, formal qualities, and I'm talking of when I'm doing photography for a publication in the UK, or if I'm doing The Wolf, which is our literary publication that Jill and I do for Nuance. all of that stuff is me sort of thinking in a completely different way. And I'm working with these concepts and all of this way of thinking with very much with Jill, for instance, or whomever I'm working with on whatever project. We have a shared goal, and so that's another different way that I collaborate. So, where are we? We have the big Libby map. And this is really just to illustrate that how you see me is probably going to depend on the set of goggles that you're wearing and how you want to collaborate with me. And so moving right along, how I get my ideas heard. Know yourself. This is a good one. I'm a big fan of this one because everybody does things differently. And so, for instance, I was talking before about the different ways that we can get our ideas out there, and not one size doesn't fit all. Well, that's the same for people. So you have to know which way it's going to work for you, and whether you're going to be a mega tweeter or whether you're going to be a mega tagger and categorizer or whatever. Know your audience. This is just, you just need to know who you're targeting, because as soon as you well, probably everyone in the room understands this point. It's about positioning and knowing who you're talking to and picking your channel and your technology appropriately so that you know that you've chosen the right tool for the right audience. Know your stories, content. This is my big thing. Clearly, I'm teaching tomorrow about getting your story straight, and that's an important thing. You need to know what your story is. You need to know why we would care about it. Make it look as good as humanly possible. Well, that's just my little thing. Build context. So this is the example where Nuance is building context for us. We're all people who work for ourselves, and the only way for us to build a kind of a context in which we can build ourselves up and have the kinds of readership and reach people is to do it together, because we're putting our lens on language with nuanced words. And we do have a real live mailing list, and we do hold events and things happen. So I can't tell you enough how that screen keeps going. Thank you. Yes, collaboration. Well, we've talked about this. And I think one thing I didn't mention is the practicalities of collaboration. And especially for women, I think if you're like I am, have kids and who are in the Swiss schooling system where they come home at lunchtime and that sort of thing, collaboration is great, and especially when you can work remotely, and that's just a practicality for me. And of course, versatility. And you saw from the different ways that I work that I've had to, over the past few years, embrace a whole bunch of stuff, that perhaps I wouldn't have before. But I think it's really worthwhile, because the environment that we're living in, as I say, we're not going back. The world of publishing and putting ideas out there is just the way it is. So suck it up. Yeah. And I'd say that the environment that we're in, it's a very, I think Zygmunt Bauman is a sociologist who uses the term liquid modern, and I really like this term because so much is shifting, and we do need to be versatile in this environment. And in a way, one of the main things that sort of stays a constant is yourself. And so I think in that kind of a context, it's good to be able to just get a boat and go with the flow. So that's me. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing about that is it's no small task to write It's transcreation is what it is. And perhaps I may have not used this image when I was talking, but I think the thing about when you have a primary text that you're working with, in order to get the ideas out and to put them in different places, having different touch points, what we're doing really essentially is pouring the story into another form or another container. I think containers are a word that's used by Brian O'Leary or someone. So I'm not wanting to steal that word. But I think that it's very hard when you're putting your energies up. Actually, Jill and I were talking about this the other day, whether the process of thinking about all these different media, whether it actually is affecting the quality of the texts themselves, because writers especially, are putting an awful lot of energy into their blogging, into their building their platform, into, for instance, pouring the gist of the story into another container so that it can be put out there in another way, 360 marketing, whatever it is. But it's really just doing different kinds of stories. But it takes an awful lot of energy to generate a text in itself, let alone all the other stuff. And that's where I'd say I have thought about doing this kind of thing, but I think my area of expertise and my skills and my interest is very much in what I'm doing. And so if I were to pursue that line, I would be getting a quote-unquote expert in that particular medium to do that, I think. Probably the idea came from partly out of necessity, because I think the workplaces, the spaces are changing, the job descriptions are changing a lot. I have worked in institutions before, and I know it's a bit different than being a freelancer. As a freelancer, I think it's really useful, and it's something that I just fell into fairly naturally, because some of the people that I work with have been very open about sharing their skills. And for me, like, learning CSS was something that I can sit down and learn stuff, and I am quite nerdy in that way, in that I will sit down and just go, right, I'm just going to suck this one up. But
so it sounds like it's more specifically around your personal versatility in the skill sets that you acclimate to, and the range in which you're able to function.
Yeah, I think so, because I think there is still a place for being able to say, this is what I'm doing, this is when it's going to be delivered, all of that stuff. That's sort of, is that where you're meaning?
Yeah. Basically, I was wondering if potentially you also meant versatility of being able to adapt your output to different medium or media.
Well, absolutely. If someone's paying you to do something, I wouldn't recommend that if they say, oh, actually, I don't really want that just text. Can you just make that again for me? Well, then no. Right. I'm going to say, hello, that's a whole nother chunk of money. Thanks very much. But yeah, but if you have time to do it, then.
And then, just real quick, do you also find that the requirements for media distribution and the different mediums you need to work within, is that settling a little bit, or is there a form of it so that it's not like you feel like you're constantly inventing what your process is and where you need things to go to? Like, as an author or content creator, do you feel like it's more clear recently that you need to do a blog and you need to do whatever the other areas that you're
Yeah, I'd say there probably was a bit of a flurry a couple of years ago where everyone was just going bananas with blogs and social media, and it was just like, if we don't do this, we're going to die. Well, frankly, you're going to die if you do it, because you can't, it's not sustainable. So, I don't know, actually Jill, my Nuance colleague, she actually has a crime fiction that she has published, and you might be able to answer that one.
Yeah, I think what you said about platform is significant, and that people it is settling to an extent. People know there's a kind of checklist of things you need to have to kind of raise your profile. But I think what's changing right now is the kind of clan mentality. People are joining different kinds of groups to self-support, so it's not so much the individual. That's the way I see it moving at the moment.
And I guess it's supported a bit by the collaboration as well. If you have a team of collaborators or a group of collaborators that are around you, you can also help to defer some of the focus.
The weight of it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think that's right. And I mean, you just can't do it all alone, I think, because there are just so many channels through which to put things out there. And I think everyone is probably different, but time is good, and this is the thing that I struggle with most in this environment where everything's so fast and people are just pumping stuff out. Well, I just actually can't do that. My life doesn't allow me to do that, and I don't think I'd want to try and, bend it so that it enabled me to do that, because I don't think that's sustainable for me. But so I do let some things percolate for quite a long time, and it depends very much on the type of thing that I'm writing though. So with my fiction, because I'm writing a crime fiction, I can rely very much on the techniques that I know about storytelling, about structure, character plot, all of those things that I know from having taught script writing. And those are the things that are a little easier to flex your muscles with on demand. With literary fiction, I think it's quite different, because a lot of the, for instance, the plot might be, as in some of Virginia Woolf's writing, the plot might be, woman walks from one side of the room to the other, okay? But in that time you've got 20 pages, and you're thinking, well, all she did was walk to the other side of the room. But she's told me about her marriage, she's told me about her annoying kid, she's, all of this stuff. And a lot of those big themes, which is the world of ideas, for me that stuff needs to percolate a bit more. So it probably depends a little bit on how plot driven it is, I'm not sure. But I mean, someone else might have ideas on this, but I think it's sort of starting to go the other way, because I've been reading little tweeties and things about micro networks and how macro networks are tapping into micro networking, if you know what I mean. And I don't know, I'm just having a kind of introvert intuitive moment there where I'm thinking it could be something to do with that we're now past this point where everything's just so massive, we're kind of needing to go back to looking at what's within our reach, if you like.
Well, how would you convince a client, for example, that the work that you do is actually the professional work and not this other person that might just be?
Oh, I think that's where this map is useful, where having built context around yourself and having something that you can point to and just say, well, just take a look through this world of publications, or have a look at some of the things that I'm doing. Because I think, I mean, I might be wrong, I haven't worked in a very large branding agency or anything like that, but the work that you do is very important, but also the person that you are is really important as well, and the network that you bring with you. I don't know.
So you don't only have context around your texts, you have also context around yourself, and you tell stories about yourself.
Yeah, and that's
this is what you tell. Yeah, and you can come, and because you have collaborations, you are more or less telling the client that here I am, here's my stuff, and I have resources.
In real life.
Okay, so it's your thing about context, content, and collaboration, probably not only for stories but for yourself too.
Mm-hmm. Stuff, I think, but I mean, yeah. yeah, but some content is versatile like that. I think and it's gonna work for some sector of content. But like I say, with fiction, you know, that conversation between those two characters, if you take it out of context, it doesn't mean anything. So yeah, I'd say it probably work for some.